Yes.
Yeah, I think we're all here. They're like, get started. So, call to order, John.
Okay. Chair Richmond,
Here.
Commissioner Zhang,
Here.
Commissioner Claris,
Here.
Commissioner O's,
Here.
Commissioner Jane,
Here.
and Commissioner Fowler. Here. All are in attendance.
So perhaps the first item, and we ought to minute it, is
Yep.
Gary's indication that he needed to resign, and we're going to treat him as having resigned from the commission as of opening of the meeting based on, I guess you talked to him live.
Yeah. So I spoke with Gary Callback today, and he is resigning his position on the commission. So we're gonna miss him, but wish him the best.
Yeah, I think it's been coming for a while, so I'm not surprised in my conversations with him. So good luck to him and going forward.
Yep. Okay.
So, what's the process then for replacing Gary?
So it will be held as a vacancy until the city conducts a recruitment. Now, unfortunately, we're currently in the middle of a recruitment, and I've already scheduled interviews, so we've missed this recruitment window. So we'll have to wait till the next recruitment window comes up. At the latest, it would be end of the summer, just unless there's a critical mass of other vacancies and we decide to do a special recruitment. The good news is we should not have any issues with quorum just yet unless we start seeing, multiple absences and issues like that. So.
All right, and then just so I understand the rules, because we have one ad hoc committee, but
Mhm.
3 is okay because it wouldn't be a quorum,
Yeah,
right?
correct.
Okay.
So a quorum of the body is still 4 because it's based on the number of seats, not the number of people.
All right, so lose somebody else in that
Then it
ad
becomes-
hoc's gotta trim down.
No.
No.
So if nobody's allowed to resign, by the way, if we were to lose somebody else, the quorum would still be based on the 7 seats on the commission. And so we have to have 4
4 out of 5.
Four of the
to do
5 present to conduct a meeting. And so that's when we start to, it gets more critical that we recruit and, hopefully fill back up. So.
All right, in any event, we oughta, and I sent him a note, but express our appreciation for Gary, who's been an enormous contributor. Hopefully he'll stay involved with police dogs, because that's also important. All right, pledge, John, is that
Yep.
next, or you need something else?
Nope, that is just fine. I'm trying to.
Do we have a second?
Zero.
Oh.
You're the host with the most. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It looks like next item is to adopt the minutes.
Yeah, so before we do that, well, and the next item is public comments on items not on the agenda. I don't see any members public here to speak. So before we actually jump into the business, I would like to introduce somebody. We have, of course, we've mentioned we've lost Gary. We've added somebody to our numbers. Well, we've actually, sorry, we've added 2 people.
Oh, you're not.
I'm so used to seeing you around everywhere. We've added
I'm
2
not
people.
new to you,
You're
you're
not new
saying?
to me, yes.
I'm rather old to you.
No, we've added 2 new people to our body, or to our numbers. So most of you, I think, know Councilmember Sally Meadows. She is our council liaison to our new council liaison to the Financial Commission. That changed over at the beginning of the year, and so we're excited to have her aboard. So you'll see her every once in a while here, and we'll talk a little bit later on about what the role of the council liaison is, and your ability to reach out to her and chat with her. And then the other person I wanted to introduce is Jesse Kim. Jesse is our new finance director with the city.
Congratulations.
Jesse started in November and has been thrust into audit and Tyler implementation and a number of other things and mid-year budget. And I keep telling her that to start planning for the budget because that's coming up quickly. And so she's getting caught up to speed and doing a fantastic job. So Jessie comes to us from the city of Berkeley. She was the county manager there, and prior to that, she worked for the great city of Los Altos as financial manager, and so she has come back to us after a couple of years away. And so, like I say, has been doing a great job. Gotten to know the staff and the city, and you'll be hearing much more from her as time goes on. So we're excited that she is here.
Good that she was here before. Having spent a lot of time in Berkeley, Los Altos is different.
Very deep.
All right. Any comments on the minutes? And if not, would someone care to move adoption or approval of the minutes?
I move to adopt and approve.
Second,
Second.
Commissioner Jang, Commissioner Claris,
Approved.
Commissioner Otis,
Yes.
Commissioner Jane,
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler. Yes. And Chair Wilson. Passes unanimously. Ready for the next one?
ready for the next.
Okay, this is the item I think Tony has been most excited for.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, and as you think about noses, don't I term out in like September, October?
there's no term in this.
Yeah, okay.
I'm just kidding. I would have to look.
Yeah, why don't you have a,
Yeah.
well, as you think about that,
Yeah.
I have pretty clear recollection. I term out September, October, something
Yeah, you do.
like that. Okay.
So for the election of a chair, we would look to see a nomination of somebody who would like to be chair.
I'd like to nominate Scott.
Okay, thank you.
Got one
John-
vote.
John, you duly told us we don't need a second,
Doesn't
so
need a second. What I would always like to do with commissions when somebody gets nominated is check with the person
Nominee.
being nominated, if
Oh, that's
they
no
are willing to do so.
Yeah, no, I would be willing to serve.
And if there's no other nominations, we can do the vote.
Mhm.
Okay. Commissioner Jang,
Yes.
Commissioner Claris,
Yes.
Commissioner Otis,
Yes.
Commissioner Jane,
Yes.
Commissioner Fowler. Yes. And Chair Richmond.
yes.
Okay, passes unanimously. And so we'll do the same. You can keep it up. So we'll do the same thing for
For
vice chair. If there's any nominations for vice chair.
So you cannot serve at all in the, like, either capacity?
I believe the rules only state that he can't be chair 2 years in a row.
And it's in,
I
But
don't
then
know.
we can nominate him for vice chair.
Yes.
I nominate Tony for vice chair.
Like the old second, first prize is 1 year, second prize is 2 years. Happy. That's the preference.
Any other nominations? All right, hearing none. Commissioner Richmond,
Yes.
Commissioner Zhang, Commissioner Claris,
Yes.
Commissioner Jane,
yes,
Commissioner Fowler.
Yeah.
And Chair Otis.
Yes.
Okay, passes unanimously. I will get you new nameplates for the next meeting. Don't worry.
Most crisp electoral process.
That was impressive, very impressive.
All right, what do you want to go to next?
Okay,
On the agenda.
so
Or
the-
actually, Scott.
No, you're,
Yeah.
am I?
You're the chair now, Scott.
Well, I got the chair by the door.
Okay.
You want to do an acceptance speech?
Congratulations.
Okay, so I guess the next item on the agenda is the ERP project implementation update.
So we have with us Stephanie Bouchain, who is coming to us live from remote. who will, has been, as many of you know, has been consulting with the city. She was our interim finance director for a bit and then has stayed on to help us with the transition to Tyler. And so she is going to give us an update on where we are at with the implementation of the ERP.
Thank you, John. Good evening, Chairman and members of the commission. It's nice to finally meet you. As John mentioned, my name is Stephanie Bouchane, and I am serving as the technical lead on the ERP project, as well as the internal coordinator, if you will. And I'm happy to report that the project is going very well. It's moving forward rapidly. We've now progressed into what is called the 600 series sessions. And for some context, we started with 100 and we will end in the 700s. So we are kind of nearing the end of those sessions. A lot of work has been done over the past quarter. We've continued with software configuration and refinement. We've started process refinement within each of the modules. There's been a significant amount of historical data uploaded as well as verified, all the way up to fiscal year 2023. We haven't started 2024 yet because we're waiting for an official close on the audit. And then once all of those numbers are finalized, within the next quarter, fiscal year 24 data will be uploaded as well. And we've also started the process of designing roles, permissions, and the user design and build. And that's a pretty significant process in system configuration for this software because of the internal controls. We anticipate much of that work will continue into the next quarter, but we're also going to be introducing some training to the external departments on some of the changes that were made to the chart of accounts, which are going to also be incorporated into the budget cycle this year. Additionally, process refinement will continue and power user training externally will also begin. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Has our new finance director approved the chart of accounts that you guys have looked at, developed?
We have shared that information with her. The chart of accounts was loaded and accepted probably 2 quarters back. So that work is complete. And I think everyone is happy with what we have.
Is that true? Okay.
Yes, I reviewed it.
Have the auditors looked at the chart of accounts as well?
The auditors have not looked at the chart of accounts, and we were not aware of any concerns on their part to the chart itself. We did make some changes, but it was mostly organizational. There weren't really any issues that we identified specifically with the chart of accounts, but there were a number of changes that were made. For example, on the organization of the departments, divisions, and programs, the numbering sequences were realigned because as the city departments grew, the numbering system kind of got out of alignment. And so the departments, divisions, and programs have been renumbered. Most of the balance sheet accounts and expense accounts remain the same. However, there was cleanup done to remove accounts that were either inactive or deleted at some point in the history of the city. So there's been a significant cleanup there. And then additionally, the big change, which isn't necessarily to the structure of the chart of accounts, but in the way that the chart of accounts is put together in an account sequence, that has changed significantly because one of the limitations of the old system was that it did not allow for us to combine a department with a fund. all of the departments were directly linked to the general fund, and then there were a number of transfers that had to take place to account for any activity that was between a department and a fund other than the general fund. And now the system allows us to directly link funds and departments, and so the accounting will be much cleaner in that those departments will be able to direct charge to the funds and reduce the number of transfers there. So that's a pretty significant change in how the chart of accounts will be displayed, and how it will be used operationally going forward.
You're doing two different charts of accounts from Central Square to Tyler.
Yes.
Who's doing the verification for that data transfer? And how do we know that verification has been done correctly?
So there was what Tyler refers to as a crosswalk. And so there was the old chart of accounts, displayed in a very detailed spreadsheet with a map essentially showing where the old accounts would be mapped to the new accounts. In the areas where there weren't any changes, it's very simple, right? Because it's just mapping from the old account to the new account. But in the areas where there were changes, it does show the map from the old accounts to the new accounts. And so when that crosswalk essentially gets uploaded along with the new chart of accounts, and there's a data validation that occurs to ensure that the crosswalk matches the new chart of accounts that's uploaded. And so we did go through an audit process, and I say audit because there are thousands upon thousands of accounts. And so there's an audit process to determine that the accounts were essentially transferred over and created correctly. And then additionally, as the historical data is uploaded, there's a validation process that we go through to ensure that that historical data is uploaded into the chart correctly and displayed correctly. And depending on what area of historical data is uploaded, there are a number of us on that team that take on different roles, essentially kind of to divide and conquer, ensuring that all of that data gets uploaded correctly.
Did the auditors look at any of that? The
Um,
outside auditors.
The auditors have not looked at it. They are not contracted to perform that work. And so I would say that if that's something that's of interest, maybe that is a discussion to be had, although somewhat atypical. I think the auditors will be concerned when so we're in the year ending 2025, your software will be loaded and implemented in fiscal year 25-26. And so your auditors will be aware of the software transition. And so there will be an additional component to the audit of that year for them to do, a reasonable amount of testing to determine that the historical data was converted properly, that the beginning balances are correct, and then that the work continued correctly during fiscal year 25-26. And so that's generally when we would expect them to do kind of their testing after the fact. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Permissions, global permissions. How many
Yes.
people are going to have global permissions?
I don't have exact numbers for you. What I can tell you is that right now there's your core implementation team, which includes myself and another technical support accountant, your project managers, as well as IT, all have what's called the Tyler Munis quote role. Which is essentially a global access. And so as we are configuring, the core team has global access. Once we move out of configuration and we move to the permanent role structure, IT will be the only users that have global access. And when I say that they will have global access, they will probably stick to utilizing and operating the roles and functions and assigning them, but they will be the only ones who will maintain that super user access. Moving down from that level, we would go into your finance director, who would have the most, let's say, global access for functionality, but will not have any access to system configuration or user permissions or roles. And that is the internal control division that will occur between finance and IT. Do you have any additional?
I'd be interested in kind of the timeline and the status. Kind of when are you expecting it to be completed? What the latest timeline is, and how on track or off track are we right now?
So I would say that we are very much on track. Go live is scheduled for July 1st. That is still the plan. And we all believe that's the best date because it's a very clean cutoff and beginning of a new fiscal year, which will allow us to keep all of the data for each year separately in 2 different systems. And so as of now, we look and I don't expect that to change as of now and going forward. We expect to be poised to go live July 1st. So all systems are go for that date at this time.
Are you going to run the systems in parallel at all, or is going to be a cutoff?
I think that there are more discussions to be had about running them in parallel, and there are pros and cons to both, right? And so I think that, as I said, there's more discussions to be had internally because I think that we have maybe kind of a diverse number of opinions on how we should approach that. I think that the likeliest outcome is that we will have some sort of a hybrid solution where there is some duality. However, it would be in the most minimal way possible because we want to make sure that we're devoting as much attention as we can to getting the new system off of the ground, and not trying to run 2 systems at the same time, if that makes sense. And so we'll probably try to identify the most critical functions and determine if we need to run those in dual systems, for a couple of weeks or a period of time. But I do also think that we'll try to minimize that as much as we can, so as we do not distract from the attention that will be needed on the new system.
Right. Difficult balancing act.
Right. So I think we'll be working on that.
Yeah. And then there's when do you know when you're going to decide when you have those kind of contingencies in place, whether
I would assume that final decisions will be made in Q4. As we get closer, probably in April, we will start making, looking more directly at the go live process and analyzing exactly what that's going to look like. Right now, we're kind of still focused on software configuration and process configuration. But definitely as we are moving into April, I would expect those conversations to come to the forefront.
So with these big types of system changes, there's a lot of change that has to happen, especially at the employee level. What's the change management strategy for the organization to kind of get everybody up to speed and moving forward in the same direction on this change?
So that's a really good question. So there's a number of things that are going to occur. First, we'll be going into next quarter. I think the first exposure that the external departments, those who are not on the core team, will get to the new system will essentially be the changes on the chart of accounts. And so we're going to be doing a training on the changes of the chart of accounts, and we'll be developing and providing each of the departments a crosswalk of their own department of what the current state is versus the future state of Tyler, and essentially how to crosswalk the new coding, and how to utilize that tool going forward, both for budget as well as go live when we're in the system. Additional to that, in the springtime, we're gonna start end user training. And there will be 2 different series of end user trainings. And I can't remember the exact proximity, but they're scheduled, I believe, 2 weeks apart. So there will be an end user training and then kind of a break so that they can process that information. And then we will come back and do additional end user training. And that will be live at computers. We haven't really worked out, exactly how we're going to schedule that. There will be some rotation, and specific schedules on who will be attending on what days. But essentially we will have computers set up and end users will come in and be trained. And that will happen in 2 different series. After we get through that, when we go live, we will also have Tyler internal consultants on site so that when we go live on day 1 or day 2 or the first week when people are having difficulties, we will have both Tyler ICs as well as members of the project team like myself, our senior accountant, our project manager on site who all are familiar with the system so that we can disperse to whoever needs help and to help them immediately when the need arises. So those are kind of our 3 touch points with the external departments at this point, and those are all going to be developed more as we move forward.
Great, thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. Any other questions?
But before I leave this and passing baton, I'll just remind Scott of kind of 1.5 things, which will fall on you now. And remind John of an agreement I reached with the city manager, which goes something like as follows, which was there's been some discussion about the contours of the commission's oversight and as it relates to the financial system versus general network security, network management, network access, and all of which are appropriate concerns, as well as some of these topics aren't totally sympathetic or not public domain discussions. The agreement he and I reached was to go do a bunch of that work on an old system that we were throwing out wasn't a useful exercise, but that once this system was in place, up and running, and had reached steady state, that then the city would go ahead and bring what, our friends in the network security, network probing, network penetration testing people in on the backside of this work. And so I burden you with that agreement with he reached, and if he has amnesia, I'm happy to call him and remind him, but I don't think he will. But that was the tenor and sequencing that we agreed to, rather than spending money on a system that we're basically tossing overboard. And the second discussion we had is in a kind of in the peripheral of that, and was touched on, is when the auditors come in and look at it, it will clearly be the first thing they do is prove up their opening balances and prove up their ICFR on this new system. And then there will be a decision for the commission to make in the planning meeting that we've agreed to have with the auditors, whether there's an appropriate expenditure of some agreed upon procedures to look at something in more detail, or whether that will all fall within their audit of the financial statements. But at some point after it's all done, they'll have to satisfy themselves that that all works. And that's something that the commission would want to at least ask about when the audit's being planned, but long time from now. It's June of 26. That is my information handoff to you. And I had both those discussions with Gabe at various points.
No, it's good to remind us of all of that.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that.
And I'd already almost forgotten about it.
Any other questions for Stephanie? Great. And we'll plan, it may not be this in depth of an update, but we'll plan to keep you updated as we go. We'll bring back Stephanie at a future meeting to give you a further update. So you stay on top of.
And next time, at some point, just up to Scott, some sense as to where you're at on budget, which I know is multiples of the initial number, but some sense as to where you're at
For current year? No.
for the project.
Oh, for the project, sorry.
This was a
Yeah, yeah.
$350,000 project.
Yeah.
Everyone along here
You're right.
thought it was, never gonna get done for 350, so we don't hold it against you because we didn't believe you. But the question is, kind of where did you end up?
What's your new estimate to complete?
I've got a different type of budget in my brain, and so,
Yeah,
yes.
this is projects.
Uh-huh.
Chair Adams, may I just say
Yes.
why I'm standing here? I'm not getting ready to make a speech, but I'm slowly recovering from back surgery, so I will be up and down throughout, and this is the only speech I'll make, I promise.
No, I feel your pain.
Yes, yeah. Everyone hurts now.
Good. Anybody else have any other questions? Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Yes, thank you for your time. Okay, next item on the agenda is the preliminary audit results.
Yeah, so, and this really is just a preliminary update. We wanted to keep you apprised of where we're at on the audit, and to do a little bit of the groundwork for the full discussion when we have the draft audit ready and the draft ACFR to present to you and for you to go over. So as I think as the commission is aware, this is our first year with our new auditors, Badawi and Associates. And so with having a new audit firm plus transition to a new finance director and the various vacancies that we've been dealing with in the finance department, we are a little later than I would have liked in the process, but we are very close. The numbers that are in the staff report, we don't anticipate changing. And so we think that those numbers are good. If they are changes, they'll be so minimal that you'll look at them and say, well, it's not really a change. We are anticipating not getting many recommendations back from the auditors on internal controls in particular, and the recommendations that they've let us know about and we anticipate, either we've already implemented a number of the changes, or they're minor tweaks that won't cause a burden to the city at all. And so we expect a good outcome on those. So we are planning at our next meeting, which is February 10th, which is 2 weeks from today, to have the full, or at least we'll call it the draft, for you to review and to go over. We are hopeful that the auditors will be able to attend via Zoom to answer questions and get your thoughts and your input and your review of it before we take it to the city council. And so with that, you have numbers in front of you. If there are items that you would like us to especially focus on when we come back, let us know and we can go into depth on those at that meeting. You'll notice one thing I will point out, you'll notice is that under item 3, the general fund performance, we did have an operating surplus this past year. We are expecting to see our unreserved, unassigned general fund balance increase significantly to a number far greater than what we told the city council potentially was available last week.
What do you attribute that to?
What's that?
What do you attribute to?
Increase in revenue, savings that we probably wish we hadn't have had to save just because vacancies and staff turnover are the largest aspects of it. You know, we typically will, I haven't met a finance director yet who will not say that general fund property tax, that our property tax revenue is only going to go up 2%. Every finance director in the world has said that we can only count on 2% increase in property tax. And we routinely see 7, 8, 9% increases in property tax revenue. So increase in revenue, decrease in certain expenditures, et cetera. So, and good fiscal management.
Yeah.
Nice plug. I like that.
Yeah,
So
so
the capital expenditures went down considerably too.
what's that?
The capital improvement expenditures went down.
Yeah, and a lot of that is timing. You know, we are spending a significant amount of money on the Lacey project, the EOC. We do spend a number of money on our street paving projects.
What's the EOC again?
The Emergency Operations Center.
Okay, thank you.
Which you're kind of sitting in.
Which
It's
Yeah.
actually,
is-
it's the infrastructure.
Yeah, the infrastructure for the Emergency Operations Center. Our street paving projects, a lot of it just depends on timing. You know, if the big invoices come in July 3rd, you know, the work was done, you know, the previous year and the invoices come in the summer, then obviously they'll be towards the next fiscal year. So
So this is more of a cash statement as opposed to an accrual statement. You would say that?
Oh, it's modified accrual.
It's more accrual?
Modified accrual.
Modified accrual,
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's the fluctuation in the charges for services from year to year? Why do they do that? Like 1 year, 10 million, 1 million, and then next year it's 7. I'm just asking because the council probably asked me that too.
sorry, I'm pulling up.
Because he said that's the only reason that revenues didn't increase by 4 million.
I saw some decrease in permit and licenses. There's a 24 compared to 23. They decrease of the charge of services.
What's the definition of services?
Services, oh, yeah, that is, I mean, that's typically our development reviews. So if 1 year has fewer people are making modifications to their home, then we're charging less, which means we're bringing in less revenue, but we're also seeing an equal amount or an equal decrease in expenditures, right? So that's typically the revenue comes in we spend the money and the money comes back in. So it's
So is that telling me that real estate taxes won't be going up then as much because you're not doing as much remodeling and revaluing? And is that a good leader or a good way to?
no, I mean, so the property taxes generally it's driven when the home sells.
Right.
That's the primary driver for property tax, and so the charges for services are generally driven by somebody who is tearing down the home that they just purchased for an amount and then doing the remodels. If there are future adjustments to the appraised value, then that would be in future years that we would just see as part of our increase in property tax revenue.
Over the summer, there was if I recall, there was a 50% cut in the vehicle budget. Is that still in place? And have we looked at how our fleet is aging? And I know police cars are expensive and a lot of service vehicles are expensive. Have we looked at what is the replacement rate of those vehicles for the future? And if you could answer that for the next meeting, that would be fantastic, so that we could look into the future for vehicles. There's a big push to go to electric vehicles. And when I was talking to the police chief, she said, we'd have to look at having many more vehicles because one has to be being charged all the time. So are we taking that into account?
We'll come back with some more information, and it may be part of the mid-year budget rather than as part of the audit. But yeah, we can look into. I know we are developing the plan for the fleet because you're right. We do need to make sure we're on top of when we're going to have to pay for $800,000 VAC contract, which we just did.
Those aren't cheap.
No, they're not. And so I know that is something that we are developing. I can figure out where we are in the process. We'll see that as part of the budget, and so we'll bring it.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see, the aging rate and what's the burn rate for like police vehicles and service vehicles.
It's mentioned that the unassigned fund balance is much higher than recommended range.
Yeah, so and a little bit more nuance to that is the city has a policy of maintaining at least 20% in operating reserve. We have that amount. And so the unassigned, unreserved, unassigned is on top of that amount. And so you're right, it's there are advantages to hanging on to it, but there's also disadvantages to hanging on to it. Of course, the value of those dollars go down as we don't spend. And so that will certainly be something that staff will be evaluating, discussing with the council. How do we want to utilize that? Whether it's for a new police facility or paying down the unfunded liability, things like that, right? And so, like I say, there are advantages to having unassigned fund balance, but there's also dis.
Is there any, oh, I'm sorry.
And I just want to ask, we'll see those in the budgeting.
Yeah, so that'll be as part of the budget process. I mean, before we go spend $28 million, we'll certainly, propose that, bring, that as part of the budgeting and review process.
And again, burdening Scott with this, the city manager on at least one occasion ruminated to me whether the 20% should go up as a percent if we're gonna head into a meaningful capital spending cycle, and he's gonna drain down cash resources. So I assume he's still thinking about how he trades those off.
Yeah. Certainly, I mean, the 20% is the directed floor, right? It's we could go higher, and I certainly would not. I would never recommend just going out and spending the $28 million in one shot and not having at least some contingency for exactly as
Which segues into the question of unfunded liability. Has that number changed since we met last?
It should not have, because we at the last meeting, you remember, we had just gotten the actuarial for,
Right.
I believe it was fiscal year 23.
Yeah.
So we won't get the fiscal year 24 until end of this year or first part of next year.
So
So
they'll do like a mid-year update or anything like that. So that number is gonna be good for a year.
well, that number will be the number we use for the year.
Yeah, it was good for 1 hour.
Yeah.
On June 30th of 23.
And that's generous.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that'll be the number we'll use, at least for planning purposes.
How much of that unfunded liability is staff recommending that we pay down?
We'll discuss that in February.
Okay.
Yeah, if that's all right. That's on the schedule for the next month.
So the audit has been completed. And so next time we'll go through the audit detail.
Yeah, so their field work's done and it's down to report writing.
So that's good. It sounds like you feel good about it.
Yep.
So far.
As good as you ever feel.
Yeah, exactly.
That is true.
That is good.
And again, throwing stuff off my plate, or at least if I remember another thing we've talked about that goes back a ways now to 17 or 18 is when we had enough staff and enough stability and we didn't have COVID, that in addition to whatever the CAFR in the long one, we used to produce, and it was a glossy that was mailed, but it was 8 pages, 10 pages, 12 pages that basically said, we don't think any of our 30,000 people live here, but for the people in this room and the people in your staff, and the auditors have read 60-page, highly, even by financial statement standards, and I get to say this, repetitive document. And I thought the city did a spectacular job of creating something, and much to Scott's point of KPIs and some bar graphs, and you kind of get your head around it. And I still remember it because it showed up in my mailbox And it showed the city had $100 million of cash, and I had no idea the city had $100 million of cash or why. And the ultimate reason was this in large part. But I would leave it with you guys. I think it was now maybe it just gets posted or you tell people in the town crier to give people a link to it, but I thought it makes people feel good about it. The city has plenty of reserves and looks a lot better than a lot of your neighbors, but we just abandoned that when we were everybody was running around putting thumbs in dikes and trying to get the long form report done within whatever the state requirement is, like end of March, whenever it is, right? So I would just ask that people I thought it was an enormous, I rarely say this, but an enormous service to the community having something that's bite-sized.
That would have been a great transition into the next agenda item, but it's, if there's nothing else on the audit, we can go to the training then.
So I just have
One
one
more,
more
okay.
question, just because it's a big number. When I look at Park in lieu,
Mhm.
that went up almost not at all. So I assume the 5150 El Camino money came after June 30th.
If it's not reported in here, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been a big,
would have been a big
4, 5,
number.
6 million bucks,
Yes.
whatever it was in Park in lieu, right?
Yeah.
Big payment.
Yeah, so I would have to check to see when it came in, but yeah,
Yeah, it must.
it would have been a very significant. And Park and Lieu is one of those that it is entirely dependent on when the developers pay the money.
Well, when they pulled the permit
Yeah.
to do it,
Yeah.
right, which I think was after June 30th, which is why you're showing kind of a static Park and lieu account, whereas that was supposed to be, I think, far and away the single largest Park and lieu payment in the history of the city.
Out of curiosity, what is the propagation delay between a developer having the obligation and actually writing the check?
Sorry, what?
How long of a delay between the obligation is identified in
Yeah.
the developer?
So I'd have to check. I can put you in contact with our.
I just wanted to ballpark
Yeah.
figure. I don't need you to.
It really depends. There is a period of time in which they can pull, after they get their approval, so that they can pull permits. I don't know if that's a
I just
year or
wonder
2
if there was
years.
statutory and are there penalties, but don't waste your time looking
No,
up
I
this mark. curiosity.
I think it goes to however long those entitlements are good for, and I don't think they have to pay till they pull their permit.
Yeah, well, they can pay anytime until they pull their.
But they can't have no check, no permit. Yeah.
Exactly.
Got it.
John, may I ask?
Yeah.
Question, sorry. Isn't there a new law that's gonna push all that back to occupancy
Yeah,
or
and
whatever the final?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's gonna be a big gap at some point.
Oh,
That's why I'm
Okay.
trying not to answer, but yeah.
Okay.
And push it back onto our development services director.
Well, you can answer that. I was working off the,
Thank you.
The
Dave,
old,
when are we gonna get the money?
Yeah.
When are we gonna get the money? They have to pull the permit. They have to pull.
yeah,
the
that's
permit.
always how
so
it's
now
at.
it's gonna go to occupancy when.
Or whatever the close to final or close to final. It's gonna be a big,
It's a big, yeah.
Cool. Anything else then on audit? So then the next item is the annual commission training.
So let me pull this up really quickly. So this item, previously, we would conduct an annual commission training in which it was on a separate night, and we'd bring everybody in from all the commissions, and it lasts an hour and a half to hour and 45 minutes, and
Thank you.
we decided to, let's have them done by commission, so we can tailor the discussion more to the financial commission. It will not be nearly that long. I go through the slides fairly quickly, and whatnot. And so, as I go through these, if you have questions, feel free to ask them. I'm trying to figure out. Okay, so the financial commission, these are the powers and responsibilities of the financial commission. This comes from the municipal code. I won't read through it, but you're familiar with them. Your purpose is to assist the city and the city council as we review our finances and provide some expertise for the city council as we go through complex topics such as pensions and audits and budgeting, et cetera. This slide you have seen in action. Each year we'll elect a chair and vice chair. As I mentioned earlier, chair can't serve 2 consecutive years as chair. This is something that is, I won't say it's being forced more, but we did have some commissions that were, oh, you did a great job as chair, you're chair again this year. Oh, you did a great job, your second year, you're chair for the 3rd year, right? They just kept electing the same person. And, I think rotating and having a new chair each year gives everybody the opportunity to have that experience, to understand, the role a bit better, because you will all start terming out of the commission, and it's good to have the experience and knowledge for the commissioners who are still on.
So is this a city policy? Is this California law? Is this?
This is entirely city policy. Attendance and participation, as we talked a little bit earlier about what constitutes a quorum, and of course we need at least a majority of the commission seats of people here to have a meeting. You as commissioners are required by the council to attend at least 75% of the regularly scheduled meetings. We have 8 regular scheduled meetings. This is the Financial Commission, so I assume you know what 75% of that is. And then
75% of 8.
And then if you are going to be absent and can let me know ahead as soon as you know that you will be absent, that helps with planning, especially if somebody else is going to need to be absent and we need to start thinking about moving the meeting to a different date. If you need to participate remotely for any reason, we're asked to let me know at least a week ahead of time, just because there's a lot that goes into planning and noticing. Of course, we prefer to have you here in person, but we do understand that sometimes you may need to participate remotely. And commissioners are not allowed to attend or may attend no more than 20% of meetings. And again, you are financial commissioners, you can do the math on what 20% of 8 is. So if you have questions about that, feel free to reach out and we can talk about it when it comes up. Reporting, this is reporting to the city council. Of course, you are appointed by and responsible to the city council. And so each year you will sit down with the council, provide them your work plan for the coming year for them to look at, and it's an opportunity to discuss and interact with the city council and see if there are projects that they want you to work on. Of course, there may be projects that come out throughout the year that may get added to your work plan. This meeting, as we'll talk about in a little bit, is scheduled for February 25th. And so that's where you'll have your chance to report to the council of here's what we've been working on and what we plan to work on for the coming year. Okay, so this is one area where we'll actually spend a little bit of time is talking about subcommittees. This is an item I'll say has been confusing for some commissions, has been a challenge for some commissions. I would not say it's been confusing or challenging for the Financial Commission, but other commissions have brought it to light. And so we thought it was important to talk a little bit about subcommittees and how the city council has directed commissions to handle subcommittees. So there's two general subcommittees that when we talk about a subcommittee, we're talking about one of two types of subcommittees. Ad hoc and standing. And so the city council has stated that it has directed that commissions are not allowed to have standing commissions.
Standing committees.
Sorry, standing committees. Yep. I will probably do that and make that mistake more than once tonight, but just know I'm saying committees. I mean committees. So standing committees. And so these are committees that, you know, are just ongoing. They're never ending. They span multiple years. The city council said commissions are not doing that. They require a considerable amount of extra work to manage standing committees. They have to be noticed, agendized, and the meetings are public, and there's a whole list of things that have to go into having a standing. But commissions are allowed to have ad hoc committees. So these are, as the second bullet says, generally these committees are focused on a single topic, and the work usually lasts less than a year. So, for example, the Financial Commission has one ad hoc subcommittee, which is to look at developing, you know, key performance indicators and whatnot. That is something that the subcommittee will work on, report back to the commission, and the work of the subcommittee is done, right? As opposed to, we say, well, we're going to appoint a subcommittee that reviews our investment performance, and they're going to look at what we should, you know, they're going to work with our investment advisors and determine what should be invested in. That's something that continues over multiple years and therefore becomes standard. Ad hoc committees have to comply with all aspects of the Brown Act, but their meetings are not required to be posted. They can go and meet via email at their homes whenever they want to, and don't require much of staff. They may, you know, rely on staff for help and assistance, but primarily are doing the work without staff being present and work. It's really a way, as you know, the commission is burdened by the Brown Act in that business has to be done at a notice meeting. You guys only meet a couple of times a quarter, and so this allows for work to be done between meetings to keep things moving along. As I mentioned earlier, ad hoc committees have a specific topic, generally a specific time frame. So we'll say, you know, we're appointing this subcommittee, and in 6 months their work is going to be done because they're going to present their final report, and the committee will go away. It can't go, and it's something that the continuing jurisdiction means that it's just ongoing and never ends. And an ad hoc committee, we can't, you know, say, okay, we're appointing a subcommittee who is going to look at our CIP and make recommendations. And once the budget is done, then that committee goes away. And then the next year, okay, we're appointing a subcommittee that is looking at our CIP and making recommendations. That would be an ongoing multi-year standing subcommittee. And then the last item, commissioners can only serve on one subcommittee at a time. And this stems from making sure that you all are not inadvertently violating the Brown Act. You know, you're serving on one subcommittee and working with two other commissioners on one topic, and then you're serving on another commission or a committee with two other commissioners, and, you know, information might be going back and forth, and we get into the issue where we might have a majority of the commission having a discussion outside of a meeting. So
John, I'll turn to Scott with this because, again, just some historical I think we've done it 4 times, just so you know. I think it's done 4 times that I can remember. Early on, there was one on pensions, which was which buckets to put the 5 million into. That was kind of one and done. Cause that's, as you know, kind of a whack-a-mole project of where to put the money. There was one when Gabe first got here where he wanted to move some reserves around, and Gary and I got sent to sit down with him and John Furtado and said that was okay, and I guess some accounts he wanted to fund. There was an IT subcommittee, which was one and done, where Gary and I went over to have a private meeting to talk about IT issues. And then your KPI thing, that's all I remember. So they've been pretty few and far between.
When we say less than a majority for this commission, it means 2 people.
So because as and this is where it does get confusing, especially when we have a resignation, so we only have 6. It is based on the number of commission seats. So we are a 7-member body. So even with the vacancy, we are still based on 7. So we can have a subcommittee of up to 3 people. So even with the vacancy, and even though 3 is half of 6, we can still have. And that's based on, it still takes 4 people to approve any motion or recommendation from the commission. So when we establish a subcommittee, so moving forward, this is a new procedure that council is directing us to implement. Is when we establish a subcommittee, there's some things that need to go into the into the motion to establish the subcommittee. And those are up there. Namely, it's just the folks on the commission that we have appointed. This is the defined purpose of the committee. It's going to last less than a year. It'll terminate once the committee presents its final report to the commission, and is just advisory and not, something that they're going to go off and make decisions and not come back to the commission for a full report. So as we have a subcommittee or the need for a subcommittee to come up, I'll remind you of all of these. So don't worry about retaining this in your memory. As I mentioned, and as has been mentioned, we have currently we have one ad hoc subcommittee that is of Commissioners Claris and Jane and Chair Ottos to look at key performance indicators and helping to develop sort of those items to help us understand where we are at in our. Now, that said, we also have what staff is titled working pairs, which can be a bit of a misnomer, which you will see in just a moment. But working pairs are, there's nothing to say that, you as a commissioner say, hey, I really want to explore this. And so you reach out to a fellow commissioner and you say, hey, let's talk about this and bring it up before the commission. Maybe you've done a little bit of homework ahead of time just so that it's not, well, we'd like to go and look at this. There's a little bit of basis. The commission may then say, yeah, we want you to keep looking at that without forming a subcommittee. It could be, and this is where I say it's a misnomer because it could be one commissioner or it could be 2 who are able to meet and talk and like I say, come back to the full commission and say, hey, here is something we've been kicking around and discussing. We'd like to put it on a future agenda to discuss, and we can add it to an agenda and then discuss it more fully. And if it needs to have a subcommittee, then go with the subcommittee. And like the last bullet says, the commission may take action or may just say, great job. Thanks for looking at it. Again, this is intended to help the commissions as they are operating and doing their work. I will say there may be times where you know, this commission doesn't have those because, you know, we are, I will say, compared to other commissions, we are a little more scheduled in what review is. You know, certain things come up at certain times, and whereas other commissions, you know, are maybe creating a new project or embarking on a new endeavor based on some direction that the council has given and whatnot. So, I already talked about that. The important thing on there's no limit on the number of working pairs that you can be on, whereas with the subcommittees, you can only be on one. Here you can work on anything as much as you want to. So a little bit of just a comparison of the two. I apologize for the examples being the library commission. I couldn't come up with anything current for the financial commission on those two topics. So for the library commission, for example, they do have, or they had a subcommittee who was looking at the improvements to the main library, but then they also have a working group that was, you know, oh, the library has this new feature, so we want to create a flyer. So they had a couple people go off okay. As was mentioned earlier, each commission is assigned a council liaison. Fabulous Councilmember Meadows as our liaison. Council liaison is really a resource for you as you are operating. As I mentioned, the commission is responsible to the council, to the council, and so this is an opportunity for you to have a resource on the council. If you have questions, thoughts, concerns, you can certainly go to Councilmember Meadows and reach out to her and say, hey, here's my question on, you know, this is what happened at the commission meeting. I can't believe John let that happen. What's going on with it? This John, not that John.
Thank
You know, what's going on? Is he completely wrong? You know, and service that, or, you know, not going to happen on this commission, hasn't happened on this commission, will never happen on this commission, but you're having an issue with a fellow commissioner, right? A conflict of some sort, some clashing of heads. You know, Councilmember Meadows, council liaison, is a resource for you to have as you continue on your service as commissioners. Council liaisons are not here to provide direction to you. They're not to influence your work as a commission. Or to say, hey, here's what you guys really should be doing, or, you know, have you thought of this, or why aren't you doing that? But really it's just a resource for you in your work. Okay. Okay, the last thing, I think it's the last thing we're going to talk about, is conflict of interest. And again, this may be more relevant for other commissions than the financial commission, but you are designated by the city as Form 700 filers, and so you do have a responsibility to disclose any potential conflicts of interest based on that. There are two areas of conflict of interest that we're going to go over. One is the perceived conflict of interest, and then incompatible activities, or, you know, actual conflicts of interest. And I think the important thing on this and conflict of interest is, if you have any questions, reach out to me ahead of time, and we can talk about it and figure out whether you do or not. So a perceived conflict of interest, this is exactly what it sounds like. You maybe you have a family member, or you sit on a board of a nonprofit that is asking the city for funding, or, you know, there's some sort of overlap between what you do in another role versus what you are doing as a financial commissioner. And, you know, it seems like your private interest may influence how you are acting on the as a commissioner. again, let me know. We'll talk about it. We'll reach out to the city attorney if we need to. If we have to talk to the Fair Political Practices Commission, we'll determine whether or not you do have a conflict, or if it's totally fine to let it go. You may need to disclose a perceived conflict of interest. If it is a true conflict of interest in which you have to recuse yourself, then you would have to disclose that and leave the room. If it's something that you can still participate in the meeting as, out of caution, you may need to disclose, hey, I sit on the board of this body that in the past has asked the city for funding. They're not asking for funding this year, so there's no conflict, but just out of an abundance of caution.
John, that's pretty close to home. So I'm on the board at CSA, which does get some money out of the city, and just to show I have a conflict of interest, not enough. So, but there you have it.
Yeah, and that is something that, it really, I won't get too deep into whether or not it is a conflict or not, because, as CSA is a nonprofit, I'm guessing you're not receiving compensation. And so there may not actually be
Emotional compensation for the good work they do. But yes.
But there may not be a defined conflict of interest as determined by the state, right? So if you have questions or any, instance, reach out to me, we can talk through it.
What about stock ownership? I currently own Union Pacific Railroad, which barely touches Los Altos over at the South Los Altos. And then the other one would be ADP, which is your payroll service.
So I'd have to look at what the disclosure requirements are for the Financial Commission.
Well, I put it on my 700 form.
Yeah. And so there may be times, again, this is, I am not a lawyer, but sometimes I have to sound like a lawyer. Like, it just depends on the circumstance, right? And so what I would.
You need to sound like a real lawyer, facts and circumstances.
Right, so, if there's a time where we're talking about our payroll system, then we'll.
If you were selecting a new payroll service, I would divulge that I have a financial interest in this one, and I would not encourage one or the other. And if somehow you're going to remove the railroad siding that goes to Kaiser there.
So yeah, and like I say, any questions, just reach out and we can talk.
Okay.
And that kind of gets into what an actual conflict of interest is. Really, one of the key indicators is whether or not you have any money on the line, basically. Ultimately, it's up to you. We'll reach out to the city attorney as early as possible. Should there be any actual conflict of interest. So with that, if you have any questions, you want to talk, of course, you can always reach out to me and we'll talk about it. And for Councilmember Meadows, who can answer questions or direct you back to you. All right. Hopefully that was less than an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. Thank you.
And it
Thank you
wasn't
for
Saturday
sharing
morning,
this.
so thank you on
Saturday
both
morning
counts.
either.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
So the last item on the agenda is the work plan.
Second to last. Let me call it up here. We looked at this at the last meeting, I believe, and I apologize. I have not added the work of the subcommittee. I realized after I posted this that I neglected to add that onto here. But you have the work plan for the current or the year. And as I said earlier, this will go to the city council. Be able to go over it with them on February 25th. Many of the projects on here are ones that you deal with every year. And are, as I said, are on a schedule. And so if there are any items that you see are missing or you have questions, we can go over those. And I did notice that I typed in 2024 instead of 2025 in one instance. Fix that.
The very first item,
Mhm.
does it need to be transformed into this, which meeting those would be?
Yeah, so this is, it actually, I realized it's, it doesn't have which meeting that it is at, but it depends on how quickly we can get the, report back from the investment advisors. Typically if the quarter ends on March 31st, we hope to have it for the April meeting, but more often than not, we see them getting it to us in time for the May meeting. But you're right, I can add which meeting dates we anticipate those being on to that.
Did we have a view of this calendar last year, which was chronological? Because I'm just curious if some meeting will get overloaded with, many items and some maybe just too light.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I don't know if you had that last year, but I can certainly put something together.
I think it'd be good to put it per meeting. That way we can see loading. That's a very good question.
And then, John, I think it's been a while since we've seen the financial advisors report.
Yeah.
So maybe at the February meeting, catch people up on that.
Yeah. We'll ask them for which ones perhaps they haven't, they can give us and then provide those.
Yeah, I think we spent too much time talking to the prior, but I think just seeing the report and seeing how they're doing against the benchmarks is I would like to see.
Okay.
And
So
then,
how does this differ from our work plan from a year ago? Is this pretty much
Pretty
the
much.
same?
Yeah.
Now, if the commission decides to move forward on kind of the financial transparency and the KPI stuff, would we add that to this?
Yeah, that was what I was mentioning earlier. I should have added it based on the last meeting and neglected to, and so I apologize for that. So I'll add it.
Is that a two-step process where the subcommittee will report to the commission in one of the meetings and then there will be, if the commission agrees to move forward, then
Yeah,
there will be.
I mean, yeah, that'll be dependent on, the subcommittee, how you want to present it. If you want to come back and say, hey, here's everything that we've come up with. Is there anything that we want to narrow it down to? And then we can come back with a final, or if the committee says, we've got everything together and we'll come to the commission with our recommendation, we can do it that way.
I'm wondering if we should aim for next meeting to have an agenda item for the subcommittee to report.
I agree.
Right. And then a discussion
Yeah.
among the commissioners.
Any other thoughts on the work plan? As I said, I'll add the subcommittee item to this. I'll probably bring it, or have it on the agenda for the next meeting, just for one final quick glance at it, make sure that I spelled everything right before it actually goes to the council on February.
It's always
25th.
nice to have a fresh set of eyes looking at things.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, then last item is the schedule, 2025 schedule.
Yeah, so this is something that when I've been liaison to other commissions, I've liked to include generally before the year starts, but was unable to for this coming year, so that you can have the meeting dates, put them on your calendars for the year. I've found that some other commissions, commissioners were responding and saying, well, I didn't know there was a meeting that day, even though it's, the regularly scheduled meeting. And so, just for your information, these are the planned dates, for the coming year. They will,
Will you continue to send invites?
yeah, oh, yeah.
Those
Yeah.
are always
Yeah.
nice.
I'll continue
Those
to
are
send those,
appreciated.
yeah. I'll continue to send those out. They will the meetings will plan for the meetings to be, here at the community center, hopefully over in the good room. But, if we have to a venue change, I'll make sure that you all are aware. And
For the joint meeting with the city council, I assume that will be at the city council's pleasure, and it'll be in City Hall.
yep, so.
Do you have approximate time when that would occur?
Yeah, so, I don't have the exact time, but, I believe the plan is the joint meetings are starting at 6 on those days. And council is encouraging all the commissioners to show up at 6, just so that, because there will be some commissions that go, need 5 minutes with the council, and then there will be other commissions that may need a little longer. It used to be, you were given a 45-minute time slot, and if you didn't fill the 45 minutes, then the council was just kind of sitting around waiting for the next commission to come.
That doesn't sound efficient.
Yeah, so, my guess, and I will let you know for sure, my guess is plan on being, at City Hall in the council chambers around 6 o'clock on that day. And hopefully I can, convince either the mayor or the city manager to let us go to the beginning.
Thank you.
So, yeah, but yes, good question. It would be in the council chambers at City Hall. Okay.
Cool. So that's the agenda for today. I think, for the next meeting, we talked about, one agenda item being the report out from the ad hoc committee. Are there any additional agenda items that we want to have for that meeting from the council commission?
Scott, probably what I would agendize, because otherwise you're playing kind of catch up. You may want an agenda item for what content or substance the commission through the chair wants to report to the council, because otherwise you're kind of scurrying and you don't have everybody's input. So it's probably having been in that position, having to make it up, hope it looks better than make it up. But you may want to agendize it and everybody can weigh in. Scott, make sure you tell them X or Y or Z.
Okay. The agenda item on content for the presentation to the city council.
Probably what I'll do is we'll have, as I said, we'll have the commission work plan, and I'll just modify the agenda title to be, commission work plan plus direction for the joint meeting with the council.
Well, also 2024 report, right? Because we need to report on what we did in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, so that would be part of it, yeah. Commission did last year.
So anything else? So we move to adjournment?
Sure.
So,
24.
In a second,
second.
you're adjourned.